So we are studying Sri Bhakti-Rasamrita Sindhu. This is Purva Vibhag, Eastern Division, second chapter, second wave, Sadhana Bhakti. So in the first chapter we studied the definition, the general definition of Uttama Bhakti. And then Sri Rupa Goswami described 6 characteristics of Bhakti. So everybody remembers that? Yes? So what is the definition of Uttama Bhakti? Say it loudly, take the mic. Okay, you can explain? What is the meaning? And?
In terms of the path of Jnana, it's very much.
I don't understand what you say. Give to mom. Okay, to the dad. This is called family.
Unplugged means free from jnana and karma.
Okay, anyone else who wants to comment on this word anavritam? Gyan karmadi anavritam. What does the word anavritam mean?
Not covered.
Not covered, yes. And what does it really mean?
What does it mean?
Yeah, what does it signify not covered? What does it mean covered? What does it mean that it's not covered by jnana and karma?
It's in its pure state.
Yeah, what does it mean in practical sense?
Not obstructed.
Not obstructed.
It is not influenced by jnana and karma.
Not influenced by jnana and karma. Anything else?
Free from the desire of jnana and karma.
Very good. So anavritam basically means that you do not harbor any desire which may come by practice of. You may be doing certain activities which are part of Gyan Marga or which are part of Karma Marga. Because bhakti is independent process. Bhakti is not dependent on Gyan Marga or Karma Marga at all. It is absolutely independent process. But what happens that anybody who is going to come to the path of bhakti, he will come from the normal society. And traditionally in India, what was being followed was Varnashrama system, which means path of karma. So now the question comes that does one have to give up completely whatever one is doing and then take to bhakti, or one can continue doing that and then do bhakti? So really speaking, bhakti does not require any of the practice of karma, but because we are living in the society and we may have some social obligations, especially in the traditional Indian society, there are certain obligations. For example, now recently the Shraddhas were performed. There is a period of Shraddha, right? 2 weeks. So we perform Shraddha ceremony, worship of the Pitris, the departed forefathers, Purvajas. So certain oblations, some worship is done for them. That is part of Varnashrama. And it is a very important part. Not just some insignificant feature, but very, very important part. And it has a great significance. So now when one becomes a devotee, one does not really need that. Why? Because when you become, this Varnashrama is based on the bodily. One's body we have acquired body from certain parents in a particular lineage. So we are indebted to them. We have certain duties towards them. Right? This is called Pitri Rina, the debt. As soon as someone is born with debts. People think that only in America people have debts. But actually everybody is born with debts. So there are 5 types, right? What are the 5 types of debts? You can tell? So Rishi Rin, Draiv Rin, Pitri Rin, Bhut Rin, right? So the debt to the sages, because they have given us the scripture, debt to forefathers, we have their DNA in our body, good or bad. Debt to the devas, and debt to other living beings, and in human beings, debt to other human beings, because no one can live by himself or herself. We all need assistance. Right? We are wearing clothes, we did not make it ourselves. Even if you pay money, that's all right. But still, somebody has to make it. What if nobody makes it? You can have your money, what will you do? So we have these debts. And when you are part of Varnashrama, then you have to pay the debt. Otherwise you will get karma for that. So that is the karma theory and karma marga. But when you take to bhakti, then one becomes free. Devarsi bhut apta nirnam na kinkaro nayam rini cha rajan. Sukadeva Goswami says that one is not rini anymore, is not debted anymore. Deva, apta, all this bhuta, all these debts are cleared. Because if you take shelter of the supreme boss, big boss, then all your debts are cleared. Right? Like you can also apply to the government and they can write off your debts. So somebody has the power to write off the debt, and that is the Supreme Bhagavan Krishna. So if you surrender to Krishna, then all these debts are removed. That's why Krishna says, Sarvadharman Paritajya Mam Ekam Sharanam Vraja. That you take my shelter, then you are free from karma and all these debts. That is the meaning. So he is saying that you give them up. Now giving up is in 2 ways. One is giving up physically and one is giving up mentally but still doing it physically. Being in society, you may still have to, if you are a devotee and other members of the family are not devotees, or even if your whole family is a devotee but the whole village is not devotee, so they are doing shraddha, then you also do it, because that is the custom. Right? That may be the family tradition, village tradition, so you follow that. But in your mind you know that you are not dependent on this for any higher purpose. You are just doing it as a social duty. That is the meaning of dharma parityajya, giving up. Because other people, they are doing it because they will get some benefit from it. So devotee does not need to do anything, so he can give it up. Like if you are living now in the West, you don't have to do anything. Nobody is there asking you why you are not doing the shraddha. So no obligation. So tavat karmani kurvita na nirvidyate yavata mat katha shravanadava shraddha yavan na jayate. Recently, those of you who were following the discussion on our website, there was a big talk by this Skuti Ram. I don't know, anybody followed that? Yes? So he was trying to press that how this is very important, this Nitya Karma. And I said, no, not for us. So he went to a big explanation, of course. It doesn't have any meaning. Then he's trying to quote from Bhakti Sandarbha. He's trying to teach me Bhakti Sandarbha. So he's just quoting the wrong part, but I don't want to unnecessarily debate. It's fine if he wants to believe na buddhi bhedam janiyed. There's no need to disturb somebody's mind. I even told that our acharyas have a difference of understanding than Ramanujacharya. That was enough for me to say that. So their understanding is that you become devotees till you have to perform Nitya Karma. And Nitya Karma includes these types of things. So for bhakti, we don't need to do that, but if you are part of the society, you are doing it, but you are not dependent on it. That is the meaning of anavritam. That's what it means. Gyan karmadi anavritam. It will be avritam, you will be covered if you are thinking that I want to do it because I want to get some benefit. So you are doing Shraddha because you will get the blessing of the forefathers. If you are doing with that intention, then your bhakti will get covered by that. Because now you are thinking that bhakti is unable to do something which the forefathers will do. So then bhakti will take a back seat and he says, okay, go ahead. So then bhakti becomes, that is the meaning of avritam. So anavritam means that you are doing it, but you are not expecting anything from it. You just do it as a social convention. Yes.
What about Sandhya Vandanam?
You give, yes, same. Exactly the same. This is what he was trying to profess in Skutiram in this talk. So he was saying that one must continue doing that. So you can do it as a social convention. Jessica, can you attend this? I don't know who is that. You can tell him in class. Yeah, just answer and tell him in class. You understand?
I was under the impression that in childhood when Sandhya Vandanam is done, you get purification of intelligence.
That's what I'm saying, that in bhakti that is not needed. Bhakti, that's the point I'm making. Bhakti is complete in itself. It does not depend on anything. So if you are doing it, you don't do it because you are going to please Krishna with this or anything like that. Okay, you can do it. You can do physical exercise for health purposes. But then you are not covering bhakti with that. You know that this is it's like we take medicine, we eat food, you can do also exercise. But Sandhya Vandanam doing, because if you don't do that, then there is pratyavaya. Means then you have to perform atonement. So if you have that kind of understanding, then it is covering the bhakti. But if you are doing it because you want to build up your brain or something, that's fine. No problem. You can use this as a tonic. So devotee does not need any of these things. So this must be understood properly. So that's why Rupa Goswami made it very clear. And those people who are arguing, that means they have not understood the definition of bhakti as given by Rupa Goswami. So this is the definition of Uttama Bhakti. So bhakti actually is always Uttama only. There is no such thing as Madhyama Bhakti, Kanishta Bhakti. That is when the person himself is Madhyama or Kanishta. Really, bhakti is bhakti. What else can it be? But then it is given different names, second class or third class bhakti, according to the person being second class or third class. So the quality of the person is superimposed onto the definition. Otherwise, bhakti is always pure. Just like the name is always pure. It cannot become something else. Krishna is always pure, he cannot become something else. But when people do not have the qualification, then he may appear something else to them. The name may appear also something else to them. So that's what we have to understand. So we have to have this concept very clear. Otherwise, we will continue with that wrong concept for the rest of our understanding. So we spoke a lot in the previous session about this definition, and we are just now revising so that you get back your memory. So is it clear? What is the meaning of anavritam? Any doubt on this? Okay? So it means that you do not have any desire. The path of jnana gives you liberation, and path of karma gives you some material happiness, whether heaven or in this life. So anavritam means that you may be doing the activities. You could have also said sunyam, not doing them. But instead of saying sunyam, he said anavritam, not covered, means that you may be doing it because we have to live in the society. So we don't want to create disturbance also. If it is necessary, sometimes you are a part of the family, then you may have to follow. Do it. You may have to go to church. Okay, go. But you are not going that this is going to give you some big blessing or anything, just because it's a custom, so you also know. Or you use it in the bhakti sense. That okay, this is also place of worship. It's also place of Krishna. So that is the understanding of Uttama Bhakti. Okay? Any doubt on this? So what is the definition of Uttama Bhakti now? Madhavendra Puri.
It's the endeavor to please Krishna with your Anushilana, your practices with mind, body and words. In this consciousness, it should not be covered by fruitive or jnani mentality. Instead, it should be completely pure desire, no other desires that is touching you in your core of your heart.
Yes. So this verse says that anyabhilashita sunyam, devoid of any other desire, right? Right? This is the definition. So now you are living in the society, you have to work, so you have desire to make money, so how will be anyabhilashita sunyam? Right? Everybody needs money. So you may do business, you may do job, so you have desire. If you are fired from the job, you are not happy, you desire another job. So you desire the job, so then that is anyabhilasha. So how can you be anyabhilashita sunyam?
Whatever you do,
Give her the mic.
maybe you have to do other things, but like you were explaining about the jnana karma and whatever you do, your intention should ultimately be to please Krishna and carry on bhakti rather than any other short-term goal.
Is that right? Any comments on this? Everybody agrees? Yes? Or you have some doubt? Some people are keeping quiet. So the meaning is that any other desire should be only to support this desire, not independently. This is the whole idea. Anavritam, Gyan Karma Anavritam means that not that you are looking for Gyan and Karma result independently. So Anyabhilashita Sunyam means that you don't have any other desire independent of bhakti. So if you have any other desire, we are hungry, we have desire for food. You don't have to go too far away. After 1 hour you will be hungry. So then you have desire for food. So that should also be part of bhakti. That you have to eat because by eating I will get energy, then I can engage in sadhana bhakti. And actually taking prasadam itself is also bhakti. Right? So that's why we say prasad seva. So everything has to be either devotional activity or assisting devotional activity.
One doesn't think like this all the time. So how do you do that?
So then start thinking. You're thinking something else, so change that. So even if you don't think like this all the time, at least you should have that understanding. It should be clear in your mind. When somebody asks you, you are a devotee, you are supposed to be free from all desire, why are you doing business? Then it's not that you have to think what to answer him. So immediately say, well, this is part of bhakti. So you should be clear, because obviously you cannot think all the time like that. We are also kirtaniya sada hari. So which one are we going to do? Are we going to do kirtan or think of this? No, we should be clear about our life. We should be very, very clear. We should be absolutely clear about bhakti, what it means. And we should know ourselves that this is what I am doing. There should be no ambiguity in our action or thoughts. So this is what is seen most of the time, that devotees are not very clear. They have some vague ideas about what they are doing, and they don't remain clear whether I should be here, I should be doing this. Remember, we read that later on when we were studying. No, we didn't do this here. Madhurya Kadambini, I was teaching it somewhere. So whether I should become full-time devotee or remain in the household, I should do more japa or more seva. I should do this, or these types of ambiguities should be cleared up. I should live in Radhakund or Vrindavan. Right? So these are things go on mind, which means not clear about what I am after, what am I supposed to do. It should be very clear, because if I am not clear, I will not do it with full heart. When there is a clarity of thought, then you can put yourself fully into it. If I have a doubt, I should do this or I should do that more. You see somebody else is chanting 64 rounds and he is chanting Namamishwaram every day in the evening and we are not doing it. So then you are thinking, well, maybe this is Kartik, I am missing something. So you should be clear whether you have to do Namamishwaram or you don't have to do it. Right? So that's why we are studying this. Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, that is the whole idea, that I want you to have complete clear understanding. Because it's not just for scholarship, but for our practice. Because we are all bhaktas and we want to become uttama bhaktas. So first we have to know what it is. What are we running after? So therefore this clarity of thought is important. Right? Clear? So everybody knows now what is Uttama Bhakti. So Uttama Bhakti means that there is just one goal in my mind. Anukullena Krishna Anushilnam. And Krishna Anushilnam means what? What does the word Krishna Anushilnam mean?
The desire of the Lord should be your desire. Serving and to understand. Either the activities for Krishna.
So, means Anushilnam means all activities. And they must be performed for the sake of Krishna. But then in the commentary, if you remember, he said Krishna or related to Krishna. Could be devotees or things related to Krishna, maybe temple, maybe cleaning pots, or cleaning or making flowers for him. So Krishna Anushilnam includes Krishna and people and objects related with Krishna. So everything should be done for that purpose. So that should be our goal. And it should be anukullena. So that is the qualifier. That it is not in the mood of just because somebody is telling you to do, but really you don't want to do it. No, you should do it from your heart. So then you will see the force of bhakti. That how powerful it is. So then he said that there are 6 qualities, because in the first chapter these are the 2 basic things which were discussed. What is the definition? And then 6 qualities. So what are the 6 qualities of bhakti? Who did the homework? Marky, you are here in the summer. Give him the mic.
Klesha means Shubhada,
Moksha Catholic, Sandayananda Visheshwatma, and Sri Krishna Kashi.
So this is 5 or 6? One is missing. Which one is missing? Sudurlabha. He is afraid of that, so he didn't say it. It would be nice if it was only 5, right? The 6th one is not such a good thing to hear. So we have to actually experience this. We have to experience how bhakti is kleshagni. How it actually makes us free from the kleshas. It should be experienced. Bhakti is not just some theoretical understanding. It is meant for our personal experience. We do a lot of preaching to others. And we feel happy by doing that. But we should feel happy by having the experience. That is the most important thing. Right? So we should experience Kleshagni and Shubhada. Because this is what it was said, that these two characteristics are experienced at the sadhana bhakti stage. Right? Next two at the bhava bhakti stage and the last two at the prema bhakti stage. The 6 were divided like that. So these two we should feel them, that how bhakti is making me free from klesha. Klesha means material suffering. And material suffering come in the form of raga and dvesha. So material attachment and material hatred. These are the two basic emotions of material mind. All other emotions, they spring from these two emotions. So we should see how we are becoming free from material attachment and material hatred. And this you can see only if you are living in a group. If you live alone, then it is very easy to believe that I am free from raga and dvesha. It's very easy to have that kind of illusion that I am very advanced. I don't have any raga or dvesha. No, but you have to live in the field where raga and dvesha can sprout. If the field is not there, then how do you know? The seed is lying inside the heart, so it sprouts when it gets little shower and some cool wind is coming, then it sprouts. So sometimes people get into this illusion that I am free from this trouble. But you come in the association of devotees, and that's when these things manifest nicely. So that's why our movement is called Sankirtan movement. Sankirtan means together. You can sing solo program, but when you are living with people, other people, dealing with other people, then you realize the problem. There was one great yogi living in the Himalayas, and he lived there for 30 years. Lived in a cave, alone, meditating. He will just go to a nearby village which was few kilometers from his cave, bag some food, potatoes, eat them. He was not eating much. So he thought that he has become very advanced, chittavritti nirodha. His mind is free from raga, dvesha, any of these things. Because he was nirjana, without any association, without any contact with human being. And because he is living in a cave, everybody respects him. So when he comes to village, everybody wants to give him some alms, some bhiksha, because people think this is great opportunity to feed a sadhu. In India, people, they give alms like that. So there was no possibility for him to have any clash with anybody. And once there was this Kumbh Mela in Haridwar. Kumbh Mela is in 4 places in India, so it was in Haridwar. So he also decided, let me go, because he never came. Many Kumbh Melas happened in Haridwar, he did not come. He was busy, just engaged in his meditation. So he thought that now I have perfected my yoga, I should also go to Kumbh Mela. So he came to Kumbh Mela. Now Kumbh Mela, the word itself means crowd. So there are millions of people there. So he came. Now who cares for him? There are thousands of sadhus like him wandering there. So he went to the Ganga river when it's time to take dip, and somebody stepped on his foot. So he got very angry. And he says, don't you know who I am? So the person who stepped on him, he was also sadhu. Then he realized that this person has not yet understood. So he said, yes, I know you are a great yogi. But I only wonder, why are you losing your temper? So then he realized himself that he still has this desha inside. But he never got the opportunity for it to sprout. Right? If you put the seed in the desert, they are not going to sprout. So he was living in desert, lonely. So like that in our heart, there are various types of kleshas which are hidden. So we should become free from them. We should actually feel this ourselves. And then you will feel a joy. When you become free from all this raga, dvesha, you feel happy. And then you feel your mind is more focused on whatever you do. You can study, you can do your seva nicely. You are not disturbed. Otherwise, mind remains disturbed, especially when you have to deal with other human beings. If you are dealing with pets, then also it is all right. Because pets don't complain. You give them their food, they are all right. But when you have to deal with human beings, then you know the problem of your own mind. And then tendency is only to find fault with the other mind. Tendency is to think that this problem is because of the other person. It's very common. So even if the other person has a problem, don't bother about that. Because that's not your concern. You did not come to spiritual life to fix the other person's mind. Right? But mostly we think like this, that I came to spiritual life to liberate everyone else except me. And this is what they say, that Haridas Thakur was chanting loudly so that he could liberate everyone around. So we also think like that we are going to liberate everyone around us. So, first, be selfish. So, Atmarthe Prithvim Tajet. So, for the sake of protecting yourself, you can give up everybody. So, don't worry about others. First, think of yourself. And if you can improve yourself, then you can help others. So, in English also they say that God help those who then help themselves. So help yourself. Don't worry about fixing the other person's mind. So this we have to practically experience how we are becoming free from the kleshas. And Shubhada, auspiciousness. So auspiciousness, what is the meaning of auspiciousness? Anybody remembers? How it was defined? Mridul Krishna.
So when in such a stage, then person acquires the qualities. Acquires the qualities which mainly manifest as the person becomes pleasing to others.
Yes.
And then the others like that person.
Yeah, so you people like to associate with you, they want to be with you. You become like wanted in a good sense. So that is the meaning. Not that as soon as you are walking, then people are avoiding you. They're saying, let him pass. So people start liking you. naturally, because your good character manifests. So that is the Shraddha. So these are two characteristics of bhakti which are described for sadhakas in the first chapter. Okay? So is this clear? So this is basically, that's what the first chapter was. To give a clear definition, understanding of bhakti. And of course then he talked about how one becomes free from all the sins, the seed of the sins. So all the seed, etc., they are all same basically, raga, dvesha, which is rooted in avidya. And avidya means ignorance about our own self in relationship with God. So we have clear understanding that we are not the material body, we are living being, we are part of Krishna. So this understanding is there, then we are free from avidya. And then we obviously also act on that understanding. Otherwise, simply to have understanding and not act on that is also of no value. Then it's like you have money or you have food and you are hungry and you are suffering. So jnanam bharam kriya vina. Kriyam vina. So knowledge is a burden if you don't put into practice. Otherwise knowledge is not heavy, knowledge is light. So now we come to the second wave, Dutiya Lahari, and this is called sadhana bhakti, or bhakti in the form of practice. So in the last chapter he defined Uttama Bhakti, and the definition of Uttama Bhakti, if one, now we just discussed that, then one would think that where is the scope now for sadhana in that? Because if the person is already anyabhilashita sunyam, gyan karma dhyanavritam, anukulyena krishnanushilanam, if he is already on this, then what is the practice required now? He is already perfect. So how do we, obviously we are not at that level, so how we reach there? So do we have to do something else to come to Uttama Bhakti? Right? We saw the definition of Uttama Bhakti, and we are not at the level of Uttama Bhakti. We want to go there. So how will we go there? What is to be done? Do we have to do something else? Right? So this is the question. So what do we have to do? Is there another means to reach Uttama Bhakti? So that is not possible, because Bhakti is not dependent on anything else. Bhakti does not require any other process. We already discussed this, that Bhakti is an independent path. So then how are we going to reach to Uttama Bhakti? You cannot attain Bhakti by performing karma. This was also another discussion, that people think that by performing karma you will become Bhakta. No, that is not possible. These are two separate paths. If you follow the path of karma, you are not going to end up in bhakti. Or if you follow the path of jnana, you are not going to end up in bhakti. By following karma, you can reach jnana. Sarva karma khalam partha jnane parisamapyate. Krishna says that karma leads to jnana. He doesn't say that he leads to bhakti. So bhakti comes only from bhakti. Bhaktya sanjayate bhakta vibhrate utpalakam tanum. So that means you have to perform bhakti to attain uttama bhakti. So that bhakti which you perform to attain uttama bhakti, that is called sadhana bhakti. But that sadhana bhakti is also uttama bhakti because it is also part of uttama bhakti. This is to be understood because there are also discussion on this. That how can this sadhana bhakti be called uttama bhakti? So if it is not uttama bhakti, what is it? And if it is not uttama, how it will lead to uttama? Because bhakti is not generated by anything else, as we will read that very clearly. So it is important to understand because bhakti is not easy to understand. And the reason for this is that we don't have any experience of bhakti. All our experience are something which do not match with bhakti. All our experiences are material and they are related with the material body. And bhakti is not related with material body. Bhakti is antaranga shakti. It is related with Krishna himself. So it is very difficult to understand it. And because it is similar to karma yoga, so there is a good chance of misunderstanding it. So that's why he is defining this very clearly. What Rupa Goswami has done is quite unique. The way systematically he defines, and then Jiva Goswami makes a wonderful analysis in Bhakti Sandarbha, which is very wonderful work he has done. So every devotee must read this if one is serious about Uttama Bhakti. So sadhana bhakti is also part of this uttama bhakti only. So therefore it says sa bhakti sadhanam bhavam prema chaiti tridhodita. There are three types of bhakti, sadhana, bhava and prema. Means this bhakti which we discussed. So sa means that bhakti. So that here refers to uttama bhakti, which was discussed earlier. Sa is a pronoun. Just remember this. So this pronoun is referring to the noun uttama bhakti in the previous chapter. And that's why sa is used. Sa is a feminine gender. Right? Because uttama bhakti. Otherwise you should have sa. So sa bhakti, that bhakti. So which bhakti? Which was defined earlier. So that has three divisions in it. So sadhanam bhavaha prema cha. So sadhana bhakti, bhava bhakti and prema bhakti. So all three are uttama. This must be clearly understood because people think that sadhana bhakti is Vadhi and Vadhi is not uttama. Although later on he will say that sadhana bhakti has two divisions, Vadhi bhakti, Raganuga, and both are part of uttama only. Because he is discussing uttama, he is not discussing anything else here. So there is a Vadhi sadhana bhakti which is also uttama. Otherwise it will not lead to prema. And there is a Raganuga, that division will come later on. So now he is just speaking in general, sadhana bhakti, and then comes bhava and then prema. So these three divisions. So Jiva Goswami writes, सा भक्ति रीति आपाततः प्रतीति अर्थमेव इदम विवेचनम विशेषतस्तु idam ज्ञेयम. So he says that this bhakti is of three types. This is spoken here for our clear understanding. That how does one get this prema bhakti or uttama bhakti? What is the process? So to make that clear, he is explaining this. But Jiva Goswami says that truly speaking, bhakti is of two types. So he is speaking more from practical understanding, how things are understood. That there is a sadhan rupa and sadhya rupa. That really speaking, there are two divisions. Sadhana means you do the practice, and then there is sadhya. When you attain that, then it becomes natural. So sadhya means, as he says, tatra prathamaya lakshanam bhedascha bhakshante dutiya tu hardha rupa. So he says that the first one, its definition and its characteristics, they will be described in this chapter. And the second is hardha rupa, means it is related with the heart. Hardha means heart. English, right? Cognate. So that is from the heart, means now you don't need to practice it. It becomes your very existence. Because we are acting according to our heart. Right? Saddhanurupa sarvasya, sattvanurupa sarvasya, shraddha bhavati bharata. Shraddha mayo ayam purusha yo yat shraddha sa eva sa. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that everybody has shraddha according to their sattva. Sattva means heart, chitta. Whatever is the composition of your chitta, of your heart, that's your shraddha. So sattvanurupa sarvasya shraddha bhavati bharata. And then whatever is your shraddha, that's what you are. Means that's what your personality is, and then you will act accordingly. So similarly here he says hardha rupa. So whatever is in your heart, then that is your personality, and that's what you are going to act. So if your heart is now filled with bhakti, then you are a devotee and you will perform bhakti only. So that is the sadhya rupa, that is the perfected stage. Sadhya, this word sadhana and sadhya, sadhya means that which we want to attain, the object of our attainment, and sadhana means the means to attain that. So sadhana bhakti means that bhakti which we are performing to attain the sadhya, which is the prema bhakti or bhav bhakti. So Jiva Goswami says that actually there are only two divisions, not three. What we are practicing and what we will attain from that. Because once you get the bhava, then after that you don't need to practice it. This is your bhava. Bhava all means same as sattva. This is your existence. This is your nature now. This is your personality. So you perform that naturally like that. Okay? So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur takes an objection to this. It's quite interesting that he says, no, what are you saying? There are three divisions. So he does not agree with Jiva Goswami. And he refutes him. That there are three divisions. Why you say there are two? So this is interesting. So it is interesting to know that it's not that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur does not have respect for Jiva Goswami, but you see he is also a thinker. So he's saying that when Rupa Goswami himself says there are three divisions, why are you making two divisions? So he goes more along with the author and not with Jiva Goswami. He takes, no, I don't go with you. I follow Rupa Goswami. So this is interesting that although he has utmost respect for Jiva Goswami, but still he can have a difference of opinion. So there are few places like that where he differs. So this is interesting that sometimes people think that we just follow blindly and don't think. No, we think, and he gives a good argument from the from this book only. It is not that he just wants to be different. He says, no, look, Rupa Goswami himself later on makes a very clear distinction between bhava and prema. So the bhava is not prema. If bhava is same as prema, then you can say there are two divisions, but he is making, so it is better we keep three. But Jiva Goswami is speaking also, he is also not wrong. You have to understand why he is making it. He is making it from our practical understanding that there is a practice stage and there is a perfected stage. Once you have the bhava, then prema comes naturally. No more practice. So he is speaking from that point of view. So he is also not wrong. So we should also not think that now one is wrong and other is right. Both are right. And we have to understand it from their angle of vision. So he says, Dvitiya tu harda rupa sapi bhakti shabdena uchyate. So the second is called harda rupa, that is also called bhakti. And yatha ekadashe bhaktya sanjataya bhaktya bibhrati utpalkam tanum. So bhakti comes from bhakti, which means that you perform sadhana bhakti and then you get prema bhakti. So in Bhagavatam this statement is there for the bhaktya sanjataya bhakta. Bhakti comes from bhakti. So first bhakti is used for sadhana bhakti and the second word bhakti is used for prema bhakti. So he says, look, there are only two divisions, there is no third one. He also has his point. It's not that he is just speaking out of his head. He also refers to Shastra. He says, look, Bhagavatam says that there are only two. That you have sadhana bhakti, then you have prema bhakti. Because bibhrati utpal kam tanum. That, you manifest these sattvika bhavas. So that is at the level of prema. So he says sadhana bhakti leads to prema bhakti. These are two divisions. So asyascha prabhava prema pranaya sneha ragakhya panchabheda. So he says the sadhya bhakti has got 5 divisions and bhava bhakti is part of it. So he says bhava, prema, pranaya, sneha and raga. 5. And then if you want to take 3 more, tatha ujjil nilmanavasya parishishta granthe mana anuraga mahabhavasya santi. So if you include mana and anuraga and mahabhava, then 8. So then you have bhava, prema, pranaya, mana, sneha, anuraga, raga, anuraga, mahabhava or bhava, mahabhava if you want to make one more. So tadeva mastau tathapi bhava premeti dvibhadatvena uktistu uplakshanarthameva. So he says therefore these are 8 divisions, but now calling here as only bhava and prema and not 8. So he says this is uplakshana, this is indicative that others should also be understood. So what Jiva Goswami is saying that he is making these divisions of sadhana, bhava, prema, but actually it is not only sadhana, bhava, prema, but there is also pranaya, there is a mana, there is a sneha, there is a raga, anuraga, mahabhava. These are also divisions, so it should be understood. So it is for this reason he is saying that let's just make 2, sadhana and sadhya. You understand his logic? His logic is that it is not just prema, but there is also other pranaya, sneha, man, all these are there. So those things are also there. So if we are not including them, let's not include this also and make only 2. Simple. So that's his vision, that's how he is saying it. So प्रेमणा एव विलासत्वाद वैरल्यात् साधकेषु अपि अत्र स्नेहादयो भेदा विविच्य नहि संसिता इति अत्र प्रेम लहरियन्ते वक्ष्यमाणत्वात्. So he says that here in this book itself, in the 4th chapter of first division, Eastern division, it is said that this prema has got various manifestations, but they are not seen in sadhakas. And these divisions are sneha, mana and so on. He says, therefore I am not describing them in the Prem Lahari. While he is describing prema, he says because they are not seen in the sadhakas, they are seen in the siddhas. So he says, I am not describing. So he says here itself, he says that prema has got further divisions. So that's why I am saying that there are 8. So let's limit only to 2 then, not make 3. So this is his logic. So then tomorrow we will read how Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives his opinion on this. If there is any question on this. Yes. Can you give the mic?
Maybe I did not understand you properly. I heard you say that Vadi is not part of Uttama, but then also you said later in the book Vadi is being Vadi and Raganuga, both parts.
No, I said that this sadhana has 2 divisions, Vedhi and Raganuga. But some people think that Vedhi is not part of Uttama Bhakti.
Aha, yeah, of course.
Just throw it.
Okay, so at one point you said if you surrender to Krishna, then all of your debts or karma are removed. So
Not the loan from the bank. Because she is worried about that.
so my question is, unless you're 100% surrendered, then you still have karma?
Yes. Because surrender is actually 100% only. You see, this is what I am saying, that when I say bhakti means only pure bhakti, and other things are just superimposition of the person's characteristic. So really speaking, it is either surrender or not surrender. Otherwise, when you are putting condition, that means you are looking your own benefit. That if this condition is satisfied, then I am surrendered. If this condition is satisfied, then I love you. Otherwise, I leave you. So then that is not love. So we speak of that, surrender, part surrender, this surrender, but actually surrender, love, bhakti, they are either 0 or 1, either on or off. So that's why Krishna clearly says, Sarva dharman parityajya. He uses the word sarva. Otherwise he could have said that some of the dharmas you can keep and others you can give up. Right? So he did not say kvachit dharman parityajya. Yes, serve all, everything. So we have spoken this, that prem gali ati sankari tame dona samay. That the path of love is very narrow. 2 things don't come on it. See, in America they have wide roads. If you go to Vrindavan, then the gullies are very narrow. So only one person can go. So either you have surrender or you don't have surrender. There is no facility of keeping all this and then walking. That's why the roads are narrow here. Because they are made with love. And they are for the people of love.